I used to think ornery was just a word for somebody hard to get along with, stubborn, difficult, me. But the more I dig into the history of America and Illinois, I think that ornery might be the highest compliment you can pay one of us. This week, I'm taking you back to 1832, to a young man, a river, and a fight that didn't go the way anyone hoped. That's Abe Lincoln, and that's New Salem. And it's a story that I don't think gets told enough in our history books. And then we're going to fast forward almost 200 years because, friends, we are watching the same story try to play out again, just with data centers instead of steamboats. After that, we'll do our regular swing through the 6 counties: Macon, Piatt, DeWitt, Logan, McLean, and Christian. Because whatever's happening at the state level, it's the local stuff that actually runs your week. Welcome to Sunshine Strategies Radio. I'm Jen McMillan, and this is your family-friendly source for news that matters here in Central Illinois and beyond. Grab a beverage and let's get into it. Maybe my next project should be just a whole book of ornery Americans. Americans who came up to a problem that the current rules didn't appropriately solve and fought like hell to fix it. And of course, my friend Abe Lincoln would need a whole section to himself. Ornery is the best descriptor that I can come up with, a mix of grit, ideals, and hope to overcome hardships. And it's one that I believe is better than, but cousin to, adjectives like redneck, punk, rebel, or spitfire. And Ornery Abe is by far my favorite version of him, and the one who pushed him into running for public office. Did you know that Abe Lincoln's first run for office was based on his and his community's fight for economic development on the Sangamon River? Now, Lincoln arrived in New Salem, Illinois in 1831, a 22-year-old with nothing but his own two hands and a willingness to work. New Salem was a scrappy little river town, maybe 150 people, perched up on a bluff above the Sangamon River, and it had big dreams. The river was supposed to be their highway to the wider world. Get goods moving on the Sangamon, connect to the Illinois River, connect to the Mississippi, and suddenly this tiny central Illinois community could be part of something larger. That was the promise. Lincoln took to the river immediately. He piloted flatboats, learned the Sangamon's moods and snags and shallows, and saw firsthand both what the river could do and what was holding it back. What was holding it back was a combination of nature and neglect. Mill dam obstructions, fallen timber, see that here lately, low water in dry seasons. The river needed work. The community needed someone to fight for that work. So in 1832, at just 23 years old, Abraham Lincoln announced that he was running for the state legislature. His platform? Improving navigation at the Sangamon River. Not slavery, not tariffs, not the grand questions of that age, but the river. His river. His community's river. He lost that first race, unfortunately, finishing 8th out of 12 candidates. But here's the detail that stops me every time. Almost every single vote that he received came from New Salem itself. His neighbors, the people who watched him work that river, voted for him nearly unanimously. They knew what he was made of. He ran again in 1834, won, and never lost a popular election again. What we sometimes forget, though, is that New Salem didn't make it. And the reason is both simple and a little heartbreaking. The Sangamon could never be tamed enough to carry commerce. Too shallow, too snaggy, too ornery. The great test came in 1832, the same year Lincoln first ran for office, when a 136-foot steamboat called the Talisman made a celebrated run up the Sangamon toward Springfield. Lincoln himself helped clear obstructions from the riverbanks and co-piloted the boat back downstream. It was supposed to prove the dream was real. It proved the opposite. The Talisman barely made it. And on the return trip, crews had to partially dismantle a mill dam just to get the boat through. No large steamboat successfully navigated the Sangamon again. And then the losses compounded. The post office moved to nearby Petersburg in 1836. And when Menard County was carved out of Sangamon County in 1839, Petersburg lost the county seat. And here's the irony that, again, stops me in my tracks. It was Abe Lincoln himself who had surveyed the town of Petersburg just a few years earlier. The man who launched his political career fighting for New Salem's future ended up drawing the map for the town that replaced it. By 1840, New Salem was gone. Not burned, not flooded, just emptied out quietly as people followed the post office and the courthouse and the commerce 2 miles up the road. The prairie took it back. And then the railroads came, and the question of the Sangamon became irrelevant entirely. So what I'm wondering this week is, why relearn a lesson we've been taught over and over again? Because back then and now, when the wealthy speculate, they're gambling with the assets that they don't actually own: land, water, labor, and trust. And we as Americans have a hard time protecting ourselves from that kind of greed. We want to believe the promise. We want to believe that this time it's different. Now, Mr. Lincoln learned that heartbreak early. New Salem, his beloved first home as a man on his own, seemed like such a wonderful possibility. A river town on the rise. Businesses, like his, speculating on the success of the Sangamon. And then watching it fall apart, not from malice, but from the simple, brutal fact that the promise was bigger than what the river could actually deliver. Now, if you've been paying attention to American history for a while, you start to recognize a bubble when you see one. That's all the New Salem dream was: a shiny bubble of speculation, inflated by hope and ambition, just waiting to pop. I came across a short video recently. A man who's worked closely with private equity firms testifying against data center development in Ohio. He wasn't talking about rivers. He was talking about towns, about deals, about economic development projects all over the country. And his point was simple and a little chilling. Every pitch promises that everybody wins, all the jobs, all the tax revenue, all the growth flowing back to the community that said yes. But he's been in that room, and so have I. We know the math. Everybody winning simply isn't possible. It never has been. Someone is betting, and someone is the bet. That's New Salem's story too, if you squint. The dream wasn't a lie exactly. Business owners like Rutledge and Cameron believed that that mill in that river in that town. But belief isn't the same as inevitability. And the gap between the two is where ordinary people lose their homes, their post offices, their futures. And my friends, I believe that these data centers, this AI boom, it's another hollow promise dressed up as progress. And we should know better by now. We're going to have to fight back if we want to protect our communities this time from speculators. Because here's what I keep coming back to. Data centers are not a lifeline for Central Illinois communities. They're another extraction. Water in, profit out. Sounds familiar. And the profit never stays here. Abe Lincoln understood this dynamic in his bones. In his very first State of the Union address, he called out what he saw as a dangerous and growing trend: the effort to place capital on equal footing with, or even above, labor in the structure of government. He'd seen it out on the river. He'd seen it in the law offices where he represented the little guy against the railroads. He knew what it looked like when the powerful interests dressed up their appetite as progress. Our Ornery friend believes something simple and radical that I believe in too: that labor, the community, the people, the hands that actually do the work and live on the land, should always come before capital. The Sangamon is still here. So is the question, what would the Ornery Americans do if they were here today? I think there's a few of us still around. All right, moving on to this week's news across our 6 counties, starting with Macon County. And of course, we're going to talk about the storm. A big shout out to Ryan Hall, y'all. I really loved watching all of his coverage about the storms, which was really needed because destructive storms tore through central Illinois this week, leaving thousands without power. Crews are still assessing serious damage at Meridian Elementary in Blue Mound, where the roof was torn open and classrooms exposed to the weather. If, like me, you've got kids in the district, keep an eye out for updates on their summer programming and ways to help. Piatt County got hit as well, with storm damage reported in Monticello. But here is a much brighter spot. There were 2 graduating seniors, Bailey of Monticello and Will from Bement, who each just received a $10,000 Piatt Trust scholarship through Capsule. I'm so happy for them and look forward to hearing great things from them in the future. And over in DeWitt County, Clinton's city leadership is turning serious attention to housing. At a recent city council meeting, the city administrator relayed word from a local realtor that residents are struggling to find housing, some even leaving the area entirely because they can't find a place to live. So now the city of Clinton is working to establish TIF districts to support new multi-unit duplex developments. If you've got a young adult in your life trying to find an affordable place to land in DeWitt County, this is a policy conversation to watch. And over in Logan County, this is a big one. The state has confirmed it's moving forward with relocating the Logan County Correctional Center, the women's prison in Lincoln, to Crest Hill instead of rebuilding it locally. Local and state leaders have pushed back hard, warning the move could devastate the community and force staff to choose between uprooting their families or losing their jobs. This is a major jobs and tax base story for Logan County, and it's worth watching closely as more details emerge over the summer. And up in McLean County, just like all of us, they had some severe weather, a level 3 enhanced risk that triggered widespread cancellations and closures across Bloomington Normal area. But there's something fun on the calendar too. The town of Normal kicked off its celebration of the 100th anniversary of historic Route 66, and more centennial events are planned throughout the summer. And I cannot forget Christian County, where there are some great news for families. Their YMCA hosted a Healthy Kids Day on June 6th. It was a free family-focused event kicking off a safe and active summer. So don't forget to mark your calendars for Taylorville's July 4th celebration. And that includes a 10 a.m. parade downtown, a cookout, and a veterans ceremony on the courthouse lawn. And you cannot miss that same evening the municipal band at the Lake Marina at 7 p.m. with fireworks to follow at dusk. So that's your week, friends. 6 counties, one shared sky, and a whole lot of Ornery spirit running underneath all of it. Storms knocked out power in Macon, Piatt, and McLean counties, while Logan is bracing for a fight over a prison that means jobs and livelihoods. Clinton's wrestling with how to keep its own kids able to afford to stay. And in the middle of all of that, there's a YMCA pool full of kids on a Saturday morning and a fireworks show waiting at the end of next month. That's the thing about Ornery Americans, Abe included. They don't get to just choose between the hard fights and the simple joys. They hold both at the same time because that's what a community actually is. The Sangamon River is still flowing, and so are you and I. This is Jen McMillan here with Sunshine Strategies Radio. If you've liked this episode, share it with a friend. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.